Welcome everyone to the third installment of the Careers in the Environment Talk series. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a smaller crowd today. I think we're competing with a concert, so thank you for showing up. We really appreciate it, and so do our guest speakers. Just so everyone is aware, this talk is being recorded for future watching for anyone who cannot make tonight's talk, so just keep that in mind. And also, if you are comfortable or can, please turn on your cameras. It just makes it feel more personable and less Zoom-like. But again, that is up to everyone's comfort. I should introduce myself. My name is Audrey. I use she, her. I'm a current fourth year here at Oberlin, and I have the absolute privilege of introducing Stefania Fregosi, alum of 96, and Diami I can't pronounce your last name. Durazio. There we go. Took me a minute. Class of 2016. Together, they will both be discussing, having a lovely conversation for us on their experiences within their fields and also within the realm of sustainable and equitable future. So enough of me talking. I will now pass it on to Stefania and Diami.
Yeah, so I thought I would tell you that right now, I was at Oberlin from 92 to 96. I majored in environmental studies and double majored in English, as was required at the time to double major. And I have been working as a sustainability analyst for Portland Community College in Portland, Oregon for the last 3 years, and have in the past done sustainability coordination work with Chemeketa Community College, and then held a huge variety of other positions across other NGOs throughout my life. And Diami, do you want to introduce yourself pretty quickly?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Diami. It's nice to meet you all and also be reunited with Mr. Peterson. And let's see, I am born and raised in the Bronx, a little bit in Miami, and I graduated in 2016. With a major in environmental studies, and then I had minors in politics, in comparative American studies, and in gender, feminist, and sexuality studies. And what else? I've worked like in government and in the nonprofit and in the corporate world, all within the sustainable / environmental world or field. And then now I'm in part-time hydroponics job, which is pretty cool for a nonprofit. And then I'm also part-time like freelancing / building my herbal business because I'm an herbalist. And so I study plant medicine and how to help folks in their healing journeys. Yeah.
So we thought we would just kind of have a conversation and let stuff naturally play out and see how that goes. And we'll fill in as necessary with other details. But I get to ask you the first question. So how do you search for environmental justice jobs, and how do you determine like what role you'll play, and what does this look like in those different sectors that you mentioned?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So my like go-to for searching for things is like rabbit holes. So I will see an organization and I will like go to their homepage, their websites, and look at their careers. I'll read their about page, I'll look at their staff, and then I'll look at what jobs they have available. And I do that for a lot of different orgs, because there are orgs that like might not seem like they're environmental, but might have like environmental job. Or there are jobs that like are super environmental, but then they have jobs that are like accounting, right? Even though you're doing accounting for an environmental organization. So I think it's that distinction of like, oh, what is the kind of work that I want to do within that organization itself. And then it looks a little different in each like category. My corporate experience, I'll keep it short because it wasn't a long time. I did sales for a wind and solar energy company. And so that was interesting. I was a sales agent, and you got like a hourly wage and then commission. And that was pretty cool, but it was different than like going to an office and like having to wear a like dress code kind of thing. And then the nonprofits that I worked at were both like in parks and then at a land trust. And so I did have sort of that element of like, yeah, going to office from 9 to 5, my first year out of Oberlin, which was kind of interesting in that like, I was like, oh, I like to be outside, and I prefer to be working with my hands and working with my body. And so that was sort of like the beginning of like, oh, is the office the right space for me? And then I would learn about other organizations. And so I was on career hunts all the time. I'm always looking at jobs. I find it really interesting what kind of jobs people offer in their orgs. So yeah, that's sort of my answer for that.
Yeah, and I think I decided that I was going to answer this one, if not all of the ones that I'm asking you. But I started off, I left Oberlin and went to work for PERG very, very briefly, and that didn't work out. And I ended up at a law firm in Boston. I kind of landed in the environmental litigation department of a very corporate law firm for a while, working on behalf of the insurance company to sue their insured, basically saying, you know what you did was, and you knew what you did at the time that we did it, so we don't want to pay up. And I hated it. I loved environmental law. I hated the job. I didn't mind organizing things or finding data. I just minded the environment that I was working in. And so I chose not to go to law school. I chose to attend a law school, but for 1 year to get a master's degree in environmental law instead, knowing that I could use that or hoping I could use that to enter into nonprofits and other kinds of work, and floated around through a land trust, consulting job with, technically it was the National Wildlife, sorry, I forget their name. My brain is stuck, but it was one of our government agencies who deals with wildlife, but technically I was also working with Department of the Army at the time, which was sort of weird, and eventually landed in higher education about 9 years ago, which is kind of nuts. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think part of it is like finding your way, right? Like from like you learn about other organizations and you learn about the kind of work that you do. So as long as you're paying attention to yourself and like what brings you joy, and following that joy, what brings you joy and money, like you'll be good. So
like, how did environmental justice start to show up in your jobs, right? Did it show up right away? Were you always like looking at like corporate mantras, or when you first started looking for work, or did you start looking for it as a criteria for employers at some point?
Yeah, well, when I graduated from Oberlin, I definitely was like, this is the kind of work that like I have knowledge in, like I was a CAST minor and a GSS minor, so I was like, and still am, I think, pretty versed in like institutional racism and like just like the way that those things show up, and like why do we call it food justice and environmental justice? Like, shouldn't it just be environmental work, right? Like, why are we highlighting, or why are we in a context in which we have to highlight those things instead of just like having a just world? So yeah, I did a conservation diversity fellowship. And so I was like on purpose, the diverse intern, right? Or the diverse fellow, because it was a full-time, full salaried 1 year position. They have since like had 6 more folks. They have 2 this year, which is really incredible that they get to like expand that opportunity. And so I like literally helped a land trust develop their environmental justice lens, so and I did it in different ways. Like it showed up in our donor letter that we did for Riverbank State Park, which is built on a waste facility that's like in the middle of West Harlem, or like at the end of West Harlem. And so just things like that, where it's like, just by nature of who I was, like that work was fit for me. And it was weird to sort of have it like, it didn't really apply that much when I was in corporate, right? Like it's hard to have like a justice lens in sales, like at that point you're just trying to get people to sign up for wind and solar, right? But it changes like how you talk to people, or how you greet people, or how people relate to you, right? And like if you're in upper Manhattan versus lower Manhattan, and like what that looks like, and if you're pitching sales in the Bronx versus pitching sales at Best Buy, like those are just like going to be different environments. Yeah, and then with the nonprofits, I think is where justice came the most through, in the sense that like the nonprofit industrial complex is very real. There was a lot of things that were expected of me that were challenging to balance as a young person, and like I was paid well, but I like worked a lot of hours, you know, and like that took a toll on my health. And so, and at the same time, I was like working in the neighborhoods that I grew up in, right? So I was like doing the work, and it can get like complicated, and it was very triggering at some points, but it's like I'm doing the like justice work, and yet there are like a lot of injustices that like I'm facing, that the communities I'm advocating for are facing, and like there's like the government bureaucracy and like the nonprofit bureaucracy, you know. So it was weaved in for me, and I showed up as best I could, and I'm still learning, I think, how to like show up with patience and grace, and not like frustration and like impatience, you know. So it's constant practice. Yeah. What about for you? How did you keep like returning or like incorporating your environmental justice passion like throughout the work you've done?
So funny, because I don't know if funny is the right word, but I walked out of school just having so much idealism and finding it so hard to get to that space. And I think, I even wrote an application on my grad school essay saying, I wanted to do social justice work, and that's why I wanted to do grad school. And then I couldn't figure out how to get to the work, and it was, I just was too disconnected from my community, from the way that I grew up, in order to really connect to community-based organizations. And so I didn't feel authentic in that space. And so, but it did eventually start to show up in the form of people. I guess I should say that the word sustainability started showing up in job titles in, I don't know, 2002, 2003, somewhere in there. And it started to become an opportunity, right, to say, well, if you really mean the triple bottom line, right, what does that mean? Like, how can we explore that more? What do you mean by the equity portion of the triple bottom line? Or am I doing environmental work? Could you please let me know? I really want to know. And then as I got more power and control in my career, I was better able and better equipped to bring that work with me. And so I started, I got lucky. I mean, Chemeketa Community College is a great place, and they really center diversity, equity, and inclusion in the work that they do. And I think that's true for a lot of community colleges. Really understand what the barriers are for education for our students. They tend to be poorer, they tend to be slightly more diverse. And so those things show up, have historically been a part of community colleges for a lot longer than other four-year institutions, having cohorts of folks, having men of color groups, having, those things have been in our spaces for a long time. And that made it easier to sort of say to folks, this work has to be interdisciplinary, it has to be connected to wraparound services. And so, it started showing up in policies. And then I moved to a really progressive, forward-looking institution. I'm very happy to be with Portland Community College, and we were able to stick climate justice like right in the middle of our climate action plan and do all of the things that I felt like I known about since college, and I don't know if they still do, like how to decide like at Oberlin. They did when I was there. It was totally part of the co-ops, and it was part of the general culture at Oberlin. And this is the first job I've ever had where we sat down and did like a 5-to-5 voting on the job. And it's well adapted, and committee is happy to do it, and it was already there when I got there. And so that just meant that there was going to be more opportunity to talk about the justice aspect of our work. And it's definitely a slow growing trend, but it's very real, and it's really cool to be on the leading edge of it. So I hope that answered it.
Should we move into like a critical skills we need in this work?
Yeah, probably we should. What are the critical skills that you need in this work?
I wrote some down for you all because I'm like, I need to name things. So a critical skill I have is kindness. I think it takes a lot of bravery to be kind in a world that like isn't that kind, and like we take advantage of that a lot. Transparency, like with yourself and then with the people that you're working with. Communication. Flexibility, optimism, and adaptability. Those are mine. Like you have to be willing and able to change along the way and like adjust your expectations of things. either don't have any and like let like the things emerge and be present in that, or like when you do have them and they're not, they either will meet them or won't, and you just can be like adaptable and flexible with those. But like those skills of like being able to like see things for what they are and not what like our stories want them to be. You know, I think when I first entered like the nonprofits, I was like, this is going to be the best work ever. And like, I'm going to just like be providing everything for everyone. And it's like, that is a really not sustainable way to live. That's not equitable and that's not sustainable. And so my like older self to my younger self is like, you know, all of your heart that you had for it is totally real. And at the same time, like cap yourself at 45 hours a week or 40 hours a week and like go take a bath or go and like not like a bath like I didn't shower, like go take a bath, like a relaxing therapeutic bath, or go get a massage or go like eat a meal with your family and relax, you know, just like things like that like I did, but I was doing like when I was already tired, as opposed to like creating a sustainable way to live.
Or work, right? Because like now that we're working from home, I have to tell myself, okay, it's 12:30. I know you're on the clock, but you know, it's perfectly acceptable for you to leave your office and take a walk around the block. You know, I tell other people to do this all the time, right? Because it's part of their environmental health, and I'm trying to get them outside to engage with the natural world, but then I have to remind myself to do it, right? Because it's so easy to just sit and get sucked into the computer and never leave. So I feel like a lot of what you mentioned were leadership qualities, and you know, I'm thinking of things like, in addition to accountability and resilience, I'm thinking about active listening skills. What other kinds of like job type things did you have to learn on the job? You know, things that you might not have taken a college class in. I mean, maybe you took a college class in Excel, but you know, what other kinds of things have you had to learn in the process, right?
Something I still want to learn is Excel, like really bad. Like I want to be really good at Excel, and I know it's probably really hard, or maybe not that hard. For people watching this later, probably going to be like, what's my Excel level? But I definitely love spreadsheets, and I like find a very pleasing way to organize them. So I use them, but I don't use them like super well. So that's some like technical skills like that are helpful. But I think my communication skills are really good. Like I was the mediator and facilitator at Oberlin with the Dialogue Center. And so a lot of my like facilitation stuff comes out. Like I'm very agreeable, or I know how to like translate things between people, and like that was a like tangible skill that was like helpful. So anything that like is extracurricular that you're doing, whether it's organizing events or getting, you know, doing outreach, getting people to show up places, like all of those are tangible skills if you know how to like describe them and identify them. You know, like you all have them. It's just about naming them and then finding where they fit in your next and like your next whatever job, profession, choice. It's like I was doing a survey for forests and I had to get on the phone with strangers, you know, and like I was like, okay, and that helped me in sales later, you know, like those are all things that like come up again and again.
Yeah, I hated talking in front of strangers for a long time. 2 years of waiting tables kind of cured me of that, but you know.
Yeah, there you go.
So there are ways
like,
around it. If you find you're not a
anyone.
natural public speaker, there are ways to learn your way around that. Right. But I feel like, yeah, Excel is amazing. We could talk all day about Excel and how, honestly, I could have cared less when I was in college, but the second I found data that like I thought would help move and make my case, the more interested I got, right? The more like I just needed to have the right problem to be able to solve in front of me.
To use it, right, exactly.
To use it, and I didn't have that in college, right? So that wasn't true. But something you said, also, I just found it really important to get good mentors, right? So if you find, I found myself at various points in my career kind of actively watching in the back of my head, like during a meeting or something, how is this person negotiating this room? How are they managing this room? How are they running this meeting? What did they say to get that person when they had to deflect a question that was obviously hard, right? Those were things that I felt like I was doing very heavily in the early part of my career. and I'm still doing. I'm still admiring sometimes how my manager does her job, because it is a different job. She's a sustainability manager. I do a lot of the day-to-day analysis and policy making work, but she has to deal with the people far more often than I do. And so sometimes I just watch her work and it's like, oh no, that was a great way of handling it.
Right.
That's right. And I don't have to deal with that right now. So I'm not really actively thinking about that in the way that I did maybe when I was the sustainability coordinator at Chemeketa Community College. But I think that's helpful. And both she and I have spoken, and we spend a bizarre amount of time reading business advice just for that kind of thing. That is the kind of tip we're looking for, right? How to pick up skills from other people, or how to run my Google email so it doesn't suck up all of my time, right? Organizational management, because if I don't organize my email, and sustainability can pull you in about 50 directions on the same day. So if you don't have like a really clear way of organizing things, I don't care how messy it looks to other people, but as long as it works for you, then you can't get through, if you don't do that, you can't get through your day. There's a lot of language too in the work that I do. I could be talking about transportation, food justice, energy policy, and construction, like in the same day. I mean, this happens to me all the time. And so it's a lot of lingo to try and organize in your brain. And you have to take, 10 or 15 minutes sometimes between a meeting and say, okay, I'm switching now to lead building construction. What are the terms I need to remember?
Different languages. Right? Sure. Yeah.
And I don't know if that comes up for you in some of the work that you do.
I think it used to, and I've gotten to a point where I'm just like, I want to speak the same language everywhere. And if I'm in a place where I don't know the language or like don't know the lingo, I'm just very vulnerable about it. And I just like stand in that, like I'm building hydroponics labs now. And like, I don't know all the terms for tools or whatever, just different vocab. And I just stand in that, and I'm like, well, I know how to grow things in soil. And so this rock wool is the equivalent to soil, and I just like, yeah, but I agree. I think that like knowing like your skill set and then also like where you are in a space is very helpful to navigating it, and just navigating again with like grace and compassion and like, yeah, lead with vulnerability. Like I think older folks find it sometimes harder to lead with vulnerability, or like they're a lot more terse about things. And I think like younger people, like we are the future, right? So like a lot of what we bring is going to be new for folks. And I think that's okay too. It might feel scary to be like, well, I want to say hi every day, or I want to eat lunch with you, or, I want to get to know you better as a person and not just like answer your emails for you or whatever the job is. So I don't know. I think like leading with that and like standing in your truth is important.
No, I agree completely. And just, working with younger folks, I don't know that's always about the information they bring me, but it is definitely always about the energy and passion that they bring with them to the job. That is always a good feed for that and a reminder of why we do what we do. So we hire interns all the time.
Cool. Well, we're at 8, so happy to open it up to questions or conversation. I know we had, I think Annabelle just joined us, so welcome. Yeah.
Well, as people are thinking about their questions and conversations, I have a few of my own. I know that I'm extremely interested. So my first question is, what professional organizations are you a part of, or like you would recommend to students who are starting to enter the career realm / real world?
Yeah, that's a good question. I did a lot of programs, and so I'm part of like all the alumni networks for those programs. So if you guys can get into any programs that appeal to you, whether that's like a fellowship or summer internships or summer or like during the year stuff, those are good ways to like have a community. And then there are some others a lot of the ones that I have are focused on students of color, but there are always like space for other folks, and like they lead to many other places. So like please go to their websites and dig around, read the articles, see who they tag, see who they mention. Like you will be surprised how many different things you find. But people of the global majority in the outdoors, nature, and the environment, which is PGM1, there's a resource list for that, like listing what Stefania and I are part of, so you don't have to like rush writing these down. But anyway, so PGM1 is like a huge conference, and it's all about the outdoors and the environment and like different careers in it. And it can go anywhere from like healing work, like spiritual stuff, to like all the way to the other end of like law, policy, like just like Patagonia, like stuff like that, so that's a cool one. And then the environmental leadership program is another one.
So
Yeah.
the Center for Diversity in the Environment, the first place that I found that was specifically for like diverse environmental professionals. So I like that one a lot. Being in higher ed, I'm part of the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. And that's just a good resource all around, because you can find out what sustainability, the range of work that sustainability folks do. I think even if just looking through case studies, you can kind of see the breadth of the world out there. And honestly, once you know a little bit more about the sector that you want to work in, then it's about knowing what that sector is like. I also think it's important to kind of take a place-based approach wherever you happen to land. And I think, when I was a young person, I moved around a lot. I've worked in Massachusetts, Minnesota, Colorado, Ohio, and before moving to Oregon, and every place was different, and learning how to figure out what the different local organizations were. I used to use the Yellow Pages. I think you just use Google now, but finding out what those organizations are and how they hook up and talk together and find out like what the local network scene is like can be good to do. And then there used to be like a green beers kind of thing that you would go to, right? Like green drinks organization where folks would get together after work. Yeah, I used to host one here in Salem because I didn't know anybody. I needed a job. So we did green drinks for a while, and you get together and talk about, careers in the environment and whatever people wanted to present on. Some cities have that as a very active, have had very active chapters. I don't know what they're doing in COVID. And then science pubs are probably another good thing to look at too. So a lot of places will have science pub talks, and you can meet a lot of local people that way, and you don't have to just think about the national organizations when you're looking around.
Yeah, that's so fair. I used to go to so many events. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I would go to work for a full day, and then I'd go to like a talk, and then be like, yeah, what am I doing? Who am I meeting? And then it is part of a lot of the communities I'm part of now, so totally.
And then states are like their whole own, local governments are their whole own category of trying to figure out how to work within it, because it's always going to be about their system. It's never going to be about what you see on LinkedIn. It's always going to be whatever that state system has set up for their very specific job requirements and questions. And sometimes they'll have outreach available for you to learn how to apply for their jobs if you're lucky. But that can be really tough to navigate. The federal jobs are almost as bad, right? But I feel like the state ones are worse because the government, you have to know how the government is set up wherever you are in order to get through it.
I'm going to put the resource sheet that they have talked about below. Additionally, if someone does have a question but maybe cannot speak at the moment, like you can also put it in the chat or send it to me and I can ask it for you on your behalf. There are many options. So I just sent the resource sheet that Dyami and Stefania have so graciously put together for us. I know it will definitely be very useful for lots of students. Are there any other questions? I can always ask another one, but I want to make sure people have a chance.
I have a question. This is like a little bit sort of geared towards me, so I hope it's helpful to other people too, though, because I have an interview tomorrow. And so something I always struggle with is is how do I figure out what is the thing that's going to make me impressive to other people? Because I know that I have a lot of great qualities and that I'm capable of doing lots of different things, but in an interview, you only have a short period of time to showcase what you're about. And sometimes I don't always know like what the best thing for me to focus is on. So do you have any ideas about like in your experience, how you've come across like what is the most impressive thing about me that I can like showcase to someone else? I don't know if that question made sense.
I mean, to me, oftentimes it isn't necessarily actually about what's the most impressive thing about you. It's how well you're communicating what you're good at versus what they want, right? So it's like, and how you'll fit in at the organization. So like looking at the organization's mission, vision, values, showing that you've like looked up whatever initiative that they said they're hiring for. Those tend to be fairly impressive things. So like knowing what it is that they want, and then saying how you see yourself like as part of that. I think that's really important. So if they're interviewing you, they already know that your skills are a good fit for them, right? It's less about your skills. It's more about if you are a good fit for them, and would they enjoy working with you, and are you going to be able to answer the questions that they give you fairly well? Even if you don't know the answer, even just saying I don't know the answer is a good answer. Or ask them good questions. I feel like those can be really important things to do during an interview. What do you think, Diami?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm trying to think to my interviews and like how I got the jobs that I got. I think I did what you said, Stefania. Like I would get very in tune to like what they would need. Like I got their job description, right? And like I copy and paste every single job description because they take those things down and then all you have is your cover letter and you're like, huh, what was I even applying to? So I copy and paste all the job descriptions always into a Google Doc. And then I also like write down like anecdotes of my own life next to all of the points that they bring. Some of them are funny, some of them are like very relevant and just like answer the question. Some of them like I try to incorporate as much of my like personality plus the skills into my interview answers, because it's like you have this opportunity to have your resume and cover letter come to life in you. And so you should pick your favorite part about yourself. Maybe it's your kindness, or maybe it's your humor, or maybe it's your the fact that you live where you're applying to work, or whatever that like thing is that makes you passionate about that job or like makes you want that job. And just make sure that you want it. Like, I think that I actually don't know if I've interviewed for jobs that I've done, I think like maybe one interview for a job that I didn't necessarily like want, but if I want it, I tell them, and I'm just like, and I don't say like, oh, I want this job. Like, I'm just like, I would really love to work for you. Like, I would love to like be part of this, and this is why, and this is how. And then I always have good questions for them, like I ask them why they like to work there. I ask them why, when they started, or, what the most challenging aspect of their work is, or, just like questions that dig a little deeper that make them feel like you're already on their team, if that makes sense. And that way they feel like they're just hiring someone who already works there. So
I think everyone's going to ask you what 3 personality traits your colleagues, classmates, or whatever are going to say about you, or how you would describe yourself. And I think the important thing is not only do you use those words, but when you go to tell some story about some skill of yours, right, make sure that you're illustrating those as well. And if you really feel that they're positive traits of yours that you want to emphasize, then showing that you didn't just come up with 3 random words to fill out an answer on a sheet is probably a good thing.
Yeah. And just be you. Like, there's something fun about you, right? Like, I'm like, oh, I'm super organized. Like, I'm very organized, like and I just like, I don't know. Yeah. Be yourself. You'll be great.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest, most important thing is being yourself. And you're not going to know exactly what makes you 100% unique in an organization for a long time, so don't stress about it too much.
Thank you.
Is that helpful? I hope it's helpful.
We didn't make you more anxious.
I practiced a lot. I practiced a lot. Like I would answer questions to myself. I would do monologues. Like I would have my friends interview me. Like I would practice because it's the nervousness, like it's the sweating. Like I got really good at just like sweating in front of people and hopefully they didn't notice, like, and I'd be super nervous, but like can't see it, can't tell.
Thinking back, I wasn't really prepared for how interviews would go when I went to my first real job interview, and I was so shocked when I got taken around from like person to person to spend 20 minutes with them. You never know. Or the first time that I had 5 people sit across the table from me and I was talking to them, I mean, it really scared me. I just had no idea what to expect. So I'm just bringing that up because you might have 5 people interviewing, you might have 1. And so that's just good to know ahead of, you're not going to know ahead of time, but it's good to know that that's within the scope of possibility, right?
And don't let it fluster you. Like when I have 5 people in front of me, I'm making eye contact with each of them. I'm being like, oh my God, that's a really great point. And I feel blah, blah, blah. Did you know that? But like you're maneuvering the audience. Like they're your audience. You are an artist,
Look at your camera. But I also do make sure that if you need to take a beat, just tell them, right? Just say, hang on, I got this. Just let me think for a second. It's fine. It's okay to have some silence. You don't have to fill every second of the interview with rapid fast talk. I'm sure John knows that well as a teacher, as a professor, but I think it's a hard thing for other folks to learn and do.
Any other thoughts, questions, fears?
I had a question in terms of like sustainability and justice and like all of these very large, like broad, important issues, like how you all stay like motivated and optimistic in your work, and like if you have suggestions, especially like when we're learning about like these issues from like a very big perspective, like ways to think about it that keep you like motivated and have let you like have professions in this.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Professional colleagues can be a really good thing in your work, especially in sustainability work. And if you don't have sustainability colleagues at your work, diversity, equity, inclusion folks know the drill really well and are also really good allies to talk to when you think that you've been up against something for a really long time and aren't getting anywhere. Believe me, they know. And so I think finding those allies could be really key to your mental health and survival, so that when you're having a really bad day or you're just not enjoying what's going on at COP26 in Glasgow, there's someone who's going to understand, because that's not something you're likely to get out of your basic friends and family, right? So growing a little bit of that network and being able to chat with somebody or check in with somebody who understands what that's like is pretty important. And I find that going to conferences is actually a really good way to start to create and have those interactions with people. And that's why I go to conferences, is really to network with other folks and also to spend that quality mental health time with other people who do the same thing that I do. What do you think, Yami? Some other ideas? Personal self-care?
Yeah, my self-care has evolved a lot over the time. I used to think that I did self-care, and I maybe did, but it wasn't like the way that I do now. Like I make myself tea a lot. I drink a lot of tea, which is like not something I did in college. I was like, tea's for when I'm sick, and I'm like, I'm sick every day. Anyway, so, and I think also the herbalist in me is like, now I drink tea every day, so that's something I find, like things like that are like,
do you guys hear Diami? Oh, maybe it's my system. I can't hear anyone.
Yeah, so I think like self-care is really finding like what brings you joy, and being in the present moment is really important. And then I did a lot of affirmation work. Like I did a lot of affirmations, like the work you do is enough, you accomplish this, like the world is full of good and bad, like whatever it is that's showing up for you is really important to like write down or be present with, find time in nature, like do the things that bring you joy, because the work is never done and it's always going to evolve, you know? So I think that like, and also like in the context of like the world's falling apart, right? Like actual apocalypse, like an actual pandemic, like what are the skills, instead of feeling like despair, what are the skills that you want to understand and learn to make you feel more equipped to tackle it, right? Like I'm studying farming, like, yes, because it's beautiful to spend time with nature, but also because I need to know how to feed myself, right? Like that's a very real answer to the concerns that are out in the world. You know, like the criminal justice system is messed up. So what do? I like got trained to like record police if I have to, right? Like those are things that like I take tangible steps in my day-to-day life that answer the things that bring me the most like anxiety and fear. You know, I was doing self-defense for a while because I was living alone in Brooklyn and I was 22 and, you know, a beautiful young woman walking down the street, right? Like there are just tangible things that are within your grasp, within your reach that you can and should be doing that just empower you and are like, okay, hold up. Like I'm the one in charge of my life, not you, not you, not you, me. And I think it's weird because we're like in college, right? And it's some of our first experiences, like really away from parental figures or guardians, and then you're thrust into the working world. And all we really know is these like parent relationships or teacher relationships. And now we have all of a sudden work relationships. And like your relationship to you is most important. And that's what you need to develop in order to like be resilient no matter your context. So that's my
I would also add, you know, I get to talk to folks who specialize in things like climate anxiety and behavioral health. And they always say to take time to feel how, whatever it is that you're feeling like, and feel how it is in your body and really acknowledge all of the different things that you're feeling before attempting to actually try to move on. And then to try and take deep breaths and then actually identify, like you suggested, Danny, a tangible step that you can take now, because that will help you out of, I think the problem is sort of like losing perspective. And the question is, how are you going to get your the perspective that allows you to live back, right? Is it going to the beach and sitting down in front of an ocean that's so vast that you feel small again? I mean, that works for me every summer. If I stick my feet in the sand for 20 minutes, I usually feel okay. It doesn't even take that long. Or, you know, is there a tree, if I'm lucky, is there a tree in my neighborhood that's big enough? I am, but, you know, that I can go sit under for 10 minutes, because it will help me a lot. And honestly, sometimes I just need to go outside and my perspective and the whole world has to shift. I just haven't, you know, I haven't been on a hike in a while. Okay, I need to go do that.
And it's okay to leave work that doesn't feel fulfilling to you. Just make a budget, make a plan. Like it's okay to leave.
Or be like, this is actually a really toxic work environment and I should find something better for myself because I deserve it.
Yeah.
And that I can. Because that happens, unfortunately. It's happened.
Yeah, and like you're figuring out what you like and what you don't like, you know, like nothing is permanent. Like you can do whatever you want. You can literally do whatever you want.
I don't love change, but I've actually worked a lot of different jobs.
Yes,
used it over time.
Exactly.
Thank you. I found that to be very motivational and helpful as someone who is going to at some point soon enter the career world. Are there any other questions or talking points anyone would like to bring up? Well, as people continue to think, I will ask another question. I had a question that is very similar to the one you've already answered, but I'm curious like how to navigate systems, frustrating like institutional systems. So, you know, working in state governments, how do you manage the frustrations of wanting to pass legislation or, you know, advocate for something and you have to go through all these barriers? Because I envision that to be extremely frustrating and requiring lots of self-care to continue the work. And if there's sort of other tactics or strategies that prevent burnout, or is it really, you know, some people are just born for that kind of work and some people just need to step away. I'm curious how to navigate those systems.
Honestly, get to know yourself. Are you somebody who forgets to eat when you're nervous? You know, are you somebody who forgets, like, what most of the environmental professionals I know have some version of like forgetting to do self-care. And you need to know what it is, so that you can watch yourself. Like, learn what your triggers are.
Yeah, triggers are big. Yeah, I would say similar to my answer before. I think like self-care and boundaries are really important. And boundaries are really unfamiliar to our society. We're very like, you're supposed to be available whenever. You're supposed to be available to your family, you're supposed to be available to your job, you're supposed to be available to your spouse, to your pets, like all the time you're expected to be on demand. And that's just a lie. Like that's just a lie. You know, like way, 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 way back, if you think about all of our ancestors, like they went to go get food when they wanted to go get food. You know, like they moved when they needed to move, like that, you know, so like if you just ground in who you are and like really get to know who that is outside of like the influence of where you grew up, or outside of the influence of who your parentals were, or outside of who you expect to be, or who, you know, like just like be present. Yeah, and I think like if it's exhausting to you, then you're not in the right career path, at least not at that time. You know, I think that like, yeah, so I think different skills come with growth.
You could ask during an interview what their expectations for you are on a job, right?
Absolutely.
And I mean, I talked to a guy who works for Tesla once, and he said, yeah, we get people who show up and they think they're going to clock in 40 hours a week, and that's not us, right? And so companies are willing to tell you what their expectations are, what the work to life balance is. If they tell you we work really hard to have our employees have a great work to life balance, just ask them how, right? And if they don't tell you that, wonder why. And I mean, if you feel like, okay, this company is going to get you where you want to go, and you're going to put aside work to life balance for a little while, maybe establish a time limit for yourself.
Right, exactly. I was like, then put a cap on it, 1.5 years, you know, 1 year, 9 months. If it's not
working out, I'm gonna go, right? Like, what I'm gonna come here, and what would make, I'm loving it, what would make me leave?
Absolutely.
When is it time to go? Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that is with financial freedom. Like I have a point on the resource sheet where I'm like, budget. Like nobody told me what a $50,000 salary meant. Nobody. Like my parents,
in New York,
themselves, their whole lives. Yeah, but I was single in 22. So like for me, it was the most money I'd ever seen in my whole life. I grew up poor. So like for me, 50K was like, oh, I can take my friends out to lunch. Like I was like, what is this? You know? So, and then now I look at that and I'm like, oh, like that can still sustain me, but it's like, I have a different plan, you know, like I put a lot of money in savings that allowed me to quit, right? Like I prepared myself for whatever my next step was. If you're going to have a 3-month gap, like multiply your rent by 6 times. Know what more than your rent, your utilities, your whatever, whoever you're living with, whatever your laundry is, like whatever those expenses exactly are, like your car, your pet, whatever it is, like have that sense so that you always know what you need and no one can hold that over you. Because like when I was going to quit, my boss was like, can you even, you know? And I was like, that's a good question. I'll get back to you on that, you know? And I went to Excel and was like, how much money do I have? What does this even mean? Like, you know, and it felt silly that I was like a graduated person, you know, and part of that was like my upbringing. Part of it was like like the older generations, there's like lack of transparency, I feel, in like organizations, where money goes, how much there is, like where it moves things or doesn't move things. So anyway, I think that like knowing your finances can really help empower you to like find the job that you need or want. And like Stefania said, like if it's not a great fit, how long are you going to be there? Because then you go back to what Sophia brought up of like, well, when it gets hard, then what happens? Right? Like you have to be able to like create and see the future. Like don't just get stuck in like, I'm right here right now all the time. Like you don't have to be in survival mode all the time.
contract work is also very different than paid full-time work.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of contract work, and my contract would suddenly end and I wouldn't have the next thing to go to.
Right.
And there's no unemployment for contract work.
Yeah,
There's no unemployment at the
You
end of
just go in your
AmeriCorps.
wallet, right?
You know, it's just like you do AmeriCorps, you're practically broke, and then they dump you and you're done. So I'm, fortunate enough to be married and have somebody in my life with a dependable income, or I was lucky. I mean, still lucky now, but that's where I was at the time. And so that worked out okay. But I would probably be in a different place if I'd prepared a little bit for it earlier on. I think the economy was super good when I left college. And I think for a long time, I just thought it would always be that way. And I've been through 2 or 3 economic downturns now. And I think it's just going to continue in that way, where things go up and then they go down, and there's so much uncertainty in the world that we live with right now, and so it's helpful to be a little extra over prepared. I wouldn't call it over prepared, just be prepared.
No, I'm like,
right?
just
Like it was
prepared.
someone else. It's not that that's an organization I want to shout out to, but yeah, be
I hope
prepared.
that's not like scary. I hope it's helpful.
No.
I don't mean to scare you all with that information. I think it's, if someone had told me when I was 21 or something, like I would have been like, oh, I get how that works better now.
I don't think it's scary. I think it can be very empowering also to like know and feel like prepared to go into the real world and sort of go like, yeah, this is scary, but it's going to be okay because I know there's different resources, and it's okay to set boundaries and take care of myself, because again, that isn't part of our culture of taking care of yourself. So no, I found that very helpful. If there's any last lingering questions or thoughts, we have maybe time for one more if it's quick. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. If there is a question and it pops up in the chat, we can get to it really quickly. But otherwise, I'll finish up with my spiel. The final installment of our Careers in the Environment series will be on December 6th, same time, 7:30 to 8:30, same Zoom. It will be with Andrew DeCoriolius and Doria Gordon discussing nonprofits, NGOs, and environmental policy. So taking what we've learned here about self-care and boundaries and what does it mean to work in environmental justice and pursue sustainability within this world, I think we can also go to that talk and apply what we've learned here to also what we will learn there. So I hope to see as many of you as you can to that talk. Also, please take a look at the resource guide that Stefania and Diami put together for us. I think it's extremely helpful. I know I will be looking at it as a future graduate. I will be looking at that resource guide. And then if there are any lingering questions, that is a wrap. Thank you so much, Stefania and Diami, for taking the time out of your busy days to speak with us. We really appreciate it. As someone who has attended all the environmental career events, I really like these. I find these very helpful. So I'm really happy that you were able to participate, and I hope it was some form of self-care to speak to the youth.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Such an amazing conversation.
Yeah, no problem. I'm around. If you got, my email is somewhere. I think Audrey and Claire have it. So if any other questions come up or whatever, anything, you're like,
reach out through LinkedIn for me, email for you.
Yeah.
Also,
rounds, don't be afraid to double email. Literally, just keep being like, yo, said you'd help me. Please, go back to it.
There's also, for students and alumni, there is the Wiser Enviro alums community that you can join on Wiser. I know I have used it just recently to post my own discussion. So again, another great resource to connect to Oberlin alumni and the big OC family to discuss how we're going to make the planet a little bit better and a little more just.
Yeah. People love OBs also. I go a lot of places, and like I was working the farmers market a lot in Union Square, and people would be like, I wear my Oberlin hat sometimes. People are like, oh, you went to Oberlin? And I'm like, yeah, I did. And so there are like a lot of, I don't know, it's just like a sweet culture. Oh my God, here's an OB calling me right now. Oh my God,
Wow.
my pet's ringing. Anyway.
All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thanks so much, you two. Take care.
Stay
Thank you.
safe.
Have a great one, everybody.